I don't exactly remember how I got into Risk of Rain 2. I think it was during the end of high school, back when my gaming experience boiled down to Minecraft PvP, Stardew Valley, and CSGO. I did play Mario games on my Wii back then, but for some reason I've always seen Nintendo games as their own entirely separate category of entertainment. The first thing that really caught my eye with Risk of Rain 2 was how much personality every character had. It didn't just pull from a generic list of gunfire animations, every character had a completely unique moveset, from Loader's heavy punches to Artificer's gentle hovering. And coming from games where your player character is often just a vessel for yourself, this was new. This was before I got into Overwatch and probably why I played that game so much. And the character that got me into all this was Bandit. You get some pretty cool abilities while playing as Bandit. He's got a shotgun, he can cloak himself, he can slash or throw a knife, but a character like him really isn't complete without a revolver. Bandit encapsulates the visual imagery of the risk-taking Deadeye. That singular eye is pretty literal. You can flip out your revolver to get a killing blow. If you miss or if it doesn't kill, it gets put back on the timer. If you do finish someone with the shot, you can do it again immediately. And this mechanic is honestly addictive. The sound design of the flip and the shot, the way you can build around it, the way the game spawns in so many enemies to let you do this little challenge over and over again. It's a very well designed move, and while the alternate ability is probably better, I don't think it can match up to the satisfaction of flipping your revolver and killing a bunch of enemies in a row. Being a roguelike, Risk of Rain has you start off weak and grow stronger and stronger, as do your enemies. You make your way around different planets, activating a teleporter to get to the next one. During your journey, you get an assortment of items that buff you in one way or another. And what's so interesting about roguelikes to me is how they create a sense of progression so quickly. Risk of Rain 2 is an example that captures that gradual escalation in difficulty that usually takes an entire game, all condensed into a single run. It's not a unique concept to have your skill run separately from your in-game progression, but Risk of Rain does it especially well, mainly because of how utterly broken you can become. Losing everything in a roguelike is all but inevitable. Whether you beat the final boss, traverse into the abyss, or die to a random enemy, you will eventually return to the main menu, lose all your items, and start doing it all again. What feels special about the game is that tight balance between risk and reward. Bandit's revolver is just one part of it. Difficulty in Risk of Rain 2 isn't just via area progression, but by time. As you start, you're fragile, especially without healing items. It's easy to die and get overwhelmed despite the weak enemies. Your survivability feels strongest in the mid-game, where you're stacked up on defensive items, while enemies haven't grown strong enough to become properly lethal. But as you move further and further into that game, that fragility begins to return. All of your buffs won't be enough when enemies can destroy your health bar in a single poke before you can even see it. You begin relying on buffs that tank hits for you, your HP starts to matter less and less. But eventually you will die, whether you simply get poked by a gup or if you beat the game or if everything crashes from having too many items. Bandit's revolver is built on risk just as the rest of the game is, and it reaches this perfect middle ground in design between a risky move and a simple rewarding outcome. There's a brief window in between taking the gun out and actually firing, which lets you course correct your impulsiveness. Even if you pull out the gun on the spur of the moment, it's not the end of the world. Similarly, the projectile hitbox has a surprisingly forgiving size, but it's still small enough to reward your aim. If you do screw up, you do lose access to a powerful move for a few seconds, and in Risk of Rain, those few seconds might be life or death. But death itself has little consequence. What else is there to do but end? And that means I played the game in a very strange way. I still fought for my life, but I didn't really care if I died. What then kept me going? My skill improved, sure, but after you've reached most endings, you've already seen most of what there is to see. After that, why did I keep playing so much? It's a question I ask about many games that I've basically completed time and time again. What was the point of the next run if I wasn't afraid of dying? I've never been particularly amazing at Rainbow Six Siege. It's my favorite first-person shooter, and I still find myself playing too safely, being too slow on the uptake, and generally making stupid decisions, but there's a character introduced in Year 9 Season 1 that kept me playing for a very long time.
Try not to do disappoint me, soldier.
Deimos is risky, brash, unlike any other operator. Being the game's first playable villain, he doesn't have to abide by the formal visual military language of the others. His design is rugged and plain, and with characters that look as bombastic as Aruni, he makes himself known with his simplicity. His silhouette is distinctive with his poncho and revolver. He's heavily stylized and edgy while still looking somewhat believable. His aesthetics, his all-black attire, and the skull-like shape of his mask immediately tell you that Deimos is a killer, playing death. He hunts down and murders operators, kind of like a Grim Reaper, and so his gadget is tied into that. You get to send out a drone that stalks your chosen opponent. During this time, you can see exactly where they are on the map, and in exchange, they can see you. And this mechanic not only encouraged but forced me to take more risks and get better. You can destroy as much as you want in Siege, you can improvise and do tricks with what you're given. It made me think about wallbangs, about kills through the ceiling, and how to push a room and use leaning and cover more. Knowing exactly where someone is an absolute godsend at times. Because even if they know where you are, you're still controlling when they start seeing you, letting you set up gunfights to your advantage. It's still incredibly risky, and you'd think that your one life per round would be valuable, and yes, it absolutely is. Dying early can completely destroy a match, whether it be for a push or a hold. But Deimos thrives off that risk. Your resources in Siege have always been limited, but each round is short and everything resets within a few minutes. Death is a consequence, yes, but that doesn't mean that being passive is the way to go. After all, nothing will progress unless someone pulls the trigger. Siege has always been deeply conflicted in its style, but I've always drawn a lot of enjoyment from its gunplay, which I'd argue has been consistently good even to this day. A gunfight will usually last less than 5 seconds, and so positioning, movement, and map understanding feels especially important. Knowing where someone is based on the name of the location or based on the sound around you is vital, especially in relation to yourself and where you're standing. Even when the enemy is getting live updates on your location, having a better understanding of the place than they do can help counter that. And there's something about Deimos' style and gameplay that made me noticeably better at using that knowledge. You could die and doom your team, but you could also get an early kill and handicap the enemy, especially if you're making good use of cover and angles. The guy whistles when his drone finds someone, his voice lines are playful and scheming, and all those aesthetic and gameplay choices feel perfectly blended. Many Siege operators are powerful but don't necessarily feel that way, maybe because their gadgets are passive, something you put down that does its job for you. Deimos is actively tied into his gadget, and so you have to constantly be using it, relaying information to your team, and maybe, just maybe, going on the hunt. A big part of Siege is being active, doing something. And though there are times where you may want to play safe, there's nothing quite like that brief burst of adrenaline when you peek a corner, aim down your sights, take a deep breath, and don't be afraid of dying. Above all, Ultra Kill is immersive. It's not something one might immediately think of to describe a game where enemies spawn into existence when you enter a room, but it is. It doesn't need realism or groundedness or even any sense of proper logic. All it needs to do is maintain its energy, and Ultra Kill is all about energy. In a lot of games, it's very easy to create a disconnect between story and what's happening on screen. It can get immersion breaking and sort of cheapen the value of what you're doing. An easy example is games that force you to hold a button to complete some sort of objective. Ultra Kill doesn't have this issue because of how fundamentally tied in its mechanics are with its story and premise. It's unchanging. While story may be happening throughout, you really only have a single goal, which is to keep yourself fueled with blood. Everything that doesn't involve killing is secondary to support that first objective. Fetching the key for a door is just an excuse to lead you into the next slaughterhouse. The game rarely ever wastes a second of time. There are lore explanations for its low poly graphics, for its puzzles and world layouts, for all of its weapon and enemy functions, but in the moment, you don't really need that. The stakes are set and they're very simple. You play through this game almost as an observer. This frantic pace means that every moment without bloodshed becomes far more memorable. The first match with V2 is iconic, and it would be less so without the beautiful and calming stroll on the way there. Leviathan is leagues more enthralling as you see its silhouette hover above you in the deep. There's uniqueness in combat encounters too, especially later down the line in every level, whether that be with new hazards, with unique level visuals, or with some kind of gimmick. In constantly varying its pace, Ultra Kill always feels like it's doing something new. And above all, what the game seems to care about the least is death. It wouldn't be really accurate to say that it doesn't punish dying. After all, P ranks, wherein you kill every enemy, get no deaths, get a high style score, and finish the level on time, are directly tied to unlocking some of the game's best content. So why then should you not be afraid of dying? It's for two reasons, probably. One, your restart button is near instantaneous, making it the perfect encouragement on the first playthrough to just keep going with little consequence. But two, self-preservation in this game is directly entwined with killing and slaughter. Blood is your fuel source after all, and so the game incentivizes you to soak yourself in blood, to get right up in the enemy's face as you blow them to pieces and heal yourself. It's a very clever premise and a very clever bit of game design. What stops you from mindlessly blasting with your shotgun over and over is hard damage, wherein a little portion of damage you take can't be recovered. It goes away after a while, but the way you make it recover is with the style meter. There's definitely some controversy about whether style should have an effect on your in-game performance, but the way the game calculates style is simple and understandable enough for this to not be a problem. You get more style when jumping or sliding, and you get more style when using multiple weapons. And this is pretty much how you play well anyway. Using different weapons means that you're not wasting too much time waiting for cooldowns, while constantly varying your movement lets you avoid enemy attacks more effectively. The hard damage system essentially tells you how to get better. And when you do get better, that style meter on the side starts to matter less and less. I found myself performing at my best when entering this flow state when I stopped focusing on my health and instead focused on playing as cool as possible. Because in that way I was doing both. The best way to avoid dying is to not be afraid of dying. It took me 2 full playthroughs of Hotline Miami 2 to actually get a feel for it, specifically for how good its fundamental gameplay was, and that moment of realization was incredible. Gameplay in Hotline doesn't get much simpler. Everyone dies in one hit. Hit enemies with melee weapons or with bullets to kill them, throw weapons to knock them over, finish them off on the ground. There's little else to it on the surface. And it's not easy, at least not in the beginning. Hotline Miami 1's level design was simple, a series of rooms and hallways tight and easy to handle. You could get away with baiting pretty easily, where when you flash the enemy for a second, they rush towards you hungrily, letting you finish them off in hordes with a melee weapon. You can still technically do that in Hotline Miami 2, which is probably why it may feel so miserable to some players. It's why people think 10 years later that its design is worse than the first game, but that couldn't be more wrong. Hotline 2's AI isn't perfect, but it's far more consistent than the first game. Hitboxes are larger and cleaner, both melee weapons and firearms feel more reliable. Its biggest flaw is not punishing baiting enough. This game is the most fun when you throw yourself at people, because the less you play like a coward, the less impactful each death is. Less commitment means braver plays, and the frustration that once had me in a chokehold went away entirely. Why would I bait out all these enemies one by one when I could do this clip that I keep sharing in every video? Getting a full combo of a level is somewhat overrated, but there's a reason why those videos are so popular. Because all those repeated attempts and deaths and failures become very worth it when you execute what you want to correctly. Or when you experiment and try something new and get a very successful result. There were so many times where I played a level and tried it differently and was shocked by how many things I could get away with. Dodging bullets, mowing down hordes, and killing enemies before they even see you on instinct, all alongside the game's infamous blood-pumping soundtrack, turned Hotline Miami 2 into one of the best action game experiences I've ever had, one where I wasn't afraid of dying. Something people forget about Hotline Miami when talking about its blood-pumping action are the moments where it isn't that. At times, it's able to hit this very specific spot, comforting and yet not at the same time. Hotline Miami 1 is often compared to Drive, a small-scale glimpse into one man's relationship with violence. It's hard to find a movie to compare to Hotline Miami 2, something with the scale and non-linear structure of Pulp Fiction, but with an atmosphere, story, and characters that feel almost Lynchian, with this mix of action, comedy, and bleak existential terror. And the game is especially good at turning your emotions on a dime. You're not afraid of dying in the moment while playing your game while slaughtering enemies, but when that invulnerability of gameplay is removed, when the characters speak in cutscenes or are simply removed from your control, that fear suddenly returns. These characters are fragile. They drop like flies, their violence moves out of your control, and it feels like a shock every single time. When they're shot and turned into a death sprite, just like the enemies you mow down over the course of the entire game. When they do something so brutal and yet not dissimilar from the rapid executions you had just been doing. Don't be afraid of dying. That's what Hotline Miami has always told you. What happens then when that death becomes inevitable? How important is your time? What's the difference if you die just a little earlier? Do you end alone at the typewriter, or in a room with your friends' corpses, or in a quiet prison cell? Or do you end with those you care about one last time? There's nothing quite like the rush that feeling gives you, a chance to experience that plot armor main character feeling that just watching a movie may not be able to replicate. So many games let you hone in on that feeling, letting you focus entirely on its objective while forgetting everything else it gives you, taking a risk with the hope that it pans out. And more often than not, it serves the game's themes very well. Not being afraid of dying may not always be the best idea, but it certainly feels good in the moment. It's almost always presented as a big risk, something that can end in devastation and horror. And sometimes you may not really care, because what if you do land that shot? Thank you for watching this video. It's a strange one. It's rare that I make something that I'm somewhat happy with while also being generally dissatisfied. I'm gonna ask you to subscribe if you somehow haven't, if you're also somehow still watching this. I'm very close to 2000, so hitting that would be quite nice. If you're here because of Hotline Miami, then well, I have a second channel where I mainly do that. My custom level tumble is there if you want to give it a shot, and I've started a little series there covering some popular workshop submissions. As for everything and everyone else, my next video will probably be another Elden Ring one, though this one is gonna be less critical and more just appreciative of small little things in the game. I've got that video on Aliens I still want to finish, a proper Hotline 2 essay because I've yet to watch a really good one, and maybe something to do with Twin Peaks. Till then, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all another time. Goodbye.